You're listening to Mark of the Maker. Hey everybody, I'm Mark Steiner. You're listening to Mark of the Maker. This is episode 135 of the show, and kind of the follow-on of Sean's conversation with Mike Franklin. But let's, Sean, you're still with me, right?
Yeah, I am here, ready to rock.
All right, so just Sean and I again. We're just going to get you the second half of this. Let's do some business first, Sean. Let's kick it off with you.
All right, to start things off, I'd like to thank everybody who is at Patreon and helping keeping the show going, helping to keep the lights on. We truly appreciate y'all, and I cannot overstate how much it means to us that you give us your hard-earned money and you believe in the show so much. Thank you, thank you. And if you guys aren't on our Patreon, if you would maybe considering going over there and pledging us $1 a month, maybe a little more, we would appreciate it. Every bit helps. This is a labor of love, and it helps keep the lights on. And if you would like to help out the show without investing any money, you can rate and review us, help keep us in the algorithm, help get us out to more and more people. So thank you, folks, and head over to patreon.com and search Mark of the Maker and give it a go.
The fucking algorithm. The algorithm is what it's all about, unfortunately.
Dude, it is. We're living in an algorithm.
And we sure are. All right, we also want to say thanks to our friends at Pt.2, a company that makes lots of nylon goods, but they got some other cool stuff too. You can find them at paladin33.com, paladin33.com. And I think Tom maybe grabbed one of these from Josh at the Blade Show. They have this kind of small, they call it a belt bag, fanny pouch, whatever you want to call it, sling bag, however you decide to wear it. It's called the American Belt Bag Mark II. And this is super cool because it's offered in waxed canvas.
Oh, yeah. Super classy stuff. Super
classy stuff. So it looks like, as of now, the only one he's got left is brown wax canvas, but they're gorgeous. I hope he makes more. These, like everything else at Paladin 33, are all made in the USA, as much as possible out of USA materials. In this case, there's a note that says, unfortunately, there's no truly made in USA waxed canvas, but it comes out of England, and everything else is made in America. So go check out Paladin 33 website and grab yourself something cool. You deserve it.
Hell yeah. Treat yourself. All right, now a big shout out to our good buddies at Giant Mouse Knives. Head over to giantmouse.com and just get a fantastic knife for yourself while you're treating yourself. And if I could recommend one, how about the Ace Tribeca in denim canvas micarta?
Ooh.
Man, this is a slick looking piece. Really nice kind of modified drop point blade. It's a flipper, denim canvas, which looks fantastic. Finish just really nice. And then it looks like it's got kind of a brass backspacer / lanyard loop there that really sets off the denim canvas perfectly. Super tasteful and just a really, really great knife. Beautiful lines, great ergos. What more could you ask for? So head over to giantmouse.com and get you some of that good stuff.
Go. Good choice. Good choice.
Oh, yeah, dude. Like there's a bad choice. This is just the one that struck my eye this time.
There you go. They got a lot of good ones over there. All right. Also, we want to say thank you to our friends at Arizona Custom Knives, arizonacustomknives.com. They have a ridiculous amount of inventory worth checking out, especially if you like old funky stuff. But they got old stuff. They got new stuff. They got recent stuff. They got new makers, they got old makers, they got knives, they got all kinds of extra things that are not knives. So definitely go to Arizona, and if nothing else, troll around, but ideally you should buy something. That's our professional opinion. But go to Arizona Custom Knives, constantly adding cool stuff to the site. We usually try to spotlight something, and I picked the classiest one I could find, because I love Phil Bogazuski's work. This is a Bogazuski spike with ebony scales and wire inlay. Something about the wire inlay, right?
Oh, yeah. And that knife's a little snapshot out of time, right?
Yes. Yep. So yeah, satin blade, dual checkered thumb studs, right? Which is awesome for me because I'm kind of lefty officially, righty. I present as a righty with knives, but yeah, gorgeous knife and tons of examples like this. And some of the stuff, if you're willing to get off the beaten path and look at some older makers like Phil, I mean, this knife isn't super cheap or anything, but for what it is, I think it's very, very reasonable. Because, like you said, this is a time machine knife. It looks like it came off his table some years ago, right? But absolutely stunning. Very classy, classy piece.
Dude, that's an early 90s masterpiece.
Yeah. And who doesn't like a classy, stabby, daggery guy like a bogey spike?
I tell you who don't like them. People I don't want to fucking know.
People that just got ventilated.
All right, and last but not least, and dude, we are coming up on this one really fast, so if you want to get in on it, you better get your ass booked. But head over to pnwci.net and maybe get you a ticket to the Pacific Northwest Custom Invitational. Billy and Nick put on the premier custom show of the year, and you would be remiss if you didn't go at least once. It's not just a good time knife-wise. Seaside is a great little vacation town, and there's lots of fun to be had while you're there. And don't forget that they have the after-show bonfire. That is a can't-miss event. So head over to pnwci.net and do it fucking quick and book your trip.
When's the show, Sean?
Oh, yeah, it's on August 2nd, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yeah, like Sean said, if you haven't been to the show, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, you got to go at least once. Such a good time.
Yeah, different vibe, very chill experience. We love it.
Yeah, and not just knives. I mean, you've got gun companies. You've got just so much cool stuff. I mean, and it's all top-notch shit.
All right. So thanks to our friends. So this episode, 135, is part 2 of Sean's conversation with Mike Franklin. And you guys kind of dive deeper into the knife side more specifically, right, Sean?
Yeah. Dude, that's the thing. He's lived so much that it took us this long to really get into the meat and potatoes of his journey into knives. But you guys are going to see that as we go through it. I mean, he was there. Let's see, we didn't mention it, but I think he was actually there for the second guild show.
Yeah.
That's when he started going to guild shows. And you're going to hear him talk about guys who are legendary names in the industry at this point. And I mean, some great stories. A lot of talk about, how he built his brand and how a lot of the stuff that we know him for, some of his trademark stuff came to be. And just once again, fantastic storytelling and an interesting life.
Yeah. Describing him as a storyteller is very well put.
Yeah.
He's all that.
And he knows how to talk. He knows how to relate to people.
Right.
And that's not the most common of things.
All right. So here's part 2 with Mike Franklin.
Enjoy, folks. Here, let's bring it back to knives. And one more thing I want to talk about from the 80s before we get into the 90s and transition into the hog stuff and the tactical revolution that came around in the 90s that you were a big part of. I know that during the 80s you had a really outstanding relationship with A.G. Russell. Made A.G. a lot of knives. So tell me about that. How did that come about? And what was that relationship like? And especially tell me about, I know you made a boatload of boot knives for him. So let's talk about the relationship with A.G.
Actually, I made a boatload of everything for A.G. I would come up with something different or whatever. I'm not sure how I met A.G. It had to be at a show.
I'm guessing guild show, since he was such an integral part.
Yes, he was. He and Goldie. And he would do the talking and Goldie would do the negotiating and all that stuff. His wife. And this was when A.G. was younger and he was vital and smart. And I was sort of in awe because he was A.G. Russell. He had knives from everybody. It didn't make any difference from $50 up to $5,000. And I'm not sure what we did first. But one of the things I did was I used to make knives out of stellite. And I read about it.
How hard was stellite to find back then?
Oh, it wasn't hard to find.
Okay.
No, it was in the United States then.
Okay.
You just had to have the money.
Yeah.
A piece, I'm thinking if it was 36 inches, probably cost me like $150 back then.
Back then, yeah.
Yeah, which was a lot. And it ate up belt. It came with a black film on it.
Yeah, that black bark.
And that just ate up belts just to get down to their stellite. And of course, you had to have tungsten carbide bits to drill the holes. Rockwell's only about 45 to 47.
But that's a deceptive Rockwell.
Yeah, and then it's like 36% chrome, and the rest is cobalt. And it is tough stuff, and you have to work on it like it's a heat-treated blade. But when I got them done, I was happy with them. I tested them, and for an outdoorsman knife, it's not probably the best there is as far as edge holding, but for toughness and non-rusting stellite, and you could take it out and stick it in the ground and come back 10 years later, and the handle might be gone, but that blade is still going to be stuck there in the ground and look like it did when you put it in. So I had a pretty good relationship with the people that stellite. So, and then I think AG came up with this, though. He called and said, Mike, there's a boatload of stellite that somebody screwed up. And this was not 6K. There are different grades of stellite. And I can't think of the name of this grade, but it was even tougher than 6K. I'd never worked it before. Turns out AG had found a 50-gallon drum full of stellite.
Damn.
Yeah, they were screwed up. He just dumped them in there. They were all different kinds of pieces, different. And some of them were bent and all that. And you could actually straighten the stellite. So I said, well, how much? And he said, well, I've already bought it. And he said, well, let's make some knives out of stellite. So I came up with this little Hunter, I don't know, 3-inch, 3¼ inch blade, straight across the top with, 1/2-inch bolsters, stainless. And we had stag. I don't know, I think there were 100 with stag. I think we started out, though, at 50. And we did the 50, and then he said, no, we got to do more. I know we did like 50 more with the stag. Back then, you could actually buy stag.
Yes.
And I didn't need very big pieces for this. It was a little knife.
Yeah, little knife, and it's bolstered, so.
Yeah, and it was pretty sharp. And so I think, and then we sold, he said, well, I want to do 20 with ivory. And I said, okay. He said, I'll send you the ivory. So it was possible to just buy ivory like stag. It was just a lot. And it's beautiful to work with. And I think we did close to 200 knives out of that bunch of stellite. But it was work. because I had straightened some of them, and and it was even tougher than 6K. And so AG and we started having a pretty good relationship there. And I'm trying to think of all the models that I made just for him. Oh, there was another one, a little gentleman's knife, straight. It's really narrow. I don't have one, but I still have photos. And it had titanium bolsters. No, I'm wrong. It had titanium handle. I got into the etching part. That's not etching.
Anodizing.
Anodizing, yeah.
Yeah, you were one of the pretty early pioneers
Yes,
with
I was.
color anodizing.
Yes. Well, that's a story, too. The anodizing. I found also a bunch of titanium that was not the normal titanium.
Yeah, not 6.4.
There's 6.4, and then there's another grade that you hardly ever see.
Wasn't it beta alloy?
Beta, alpha and beta, yes. This was beta. And it was even worse than the regular stellite. That's what that other stuff, that bunch that he bought in that barrel was. It was beta. And I had, I don't know, it was the same deal. I found a bunch of beta titanium and just bought it, and found out I had a very, very powerful anodizer. I didn't know it at the time. You remember Reese's? Reese's generator shop?
Yeah.
Well, I would go out there when I wanted to blast something. He had a big old blasting cabinet, and he would let me blast my knives, and it looked great, So I got to knowing Lulu. I don't know why his name was Lulu, but he was really nice. And one day we're standing there talking, and I look over in the corner, and there was this big thing sitting there, about a foot square, with dials on it. And I said, Lulu, what is that? He said, that's a DC power thing. And I said, well, why is it sitting there in the corner? He said, because I don't know what to do with it. And I said, how much you want for it? He said, take it home. So I took it home and started hooking it up to my titanium. And this beta alloy, I was getting colors that I had never seen before in any of the magazines and all that.
I remember it anodized so vibrant.
This thing was so powerful. If you turned it up too high, it would actually eat the titanium.
Yeah. Start to etch or erode it.
Which I did, mistakenly. And, oh my God, it just ruined.
I'd say it sizzled and popped.
Oh, and then you could hardly grind it out. You would just grind the titanium away trying to get those holes and all that stuff out of there. So I learned where the demarcation line was. But before that, I would get this bluish green that was just eye-popping.
Yeah, I remember that.
I had 2 of those knives up there that they're Marshes. Are you familiar with those?
Yeah.
Okay, you've seen the titanium on those. I think those are pretty much regular. They're not that beta stuff. And anyway, I came up with, we called it the gentleman's knife. And it had a really straight little blade there, and swoopy titanium handles in the back. It swooped up, and there were holes that got progressively smaller in the back. And I don't know how many of that thing I sold with AG. It was couple of hundred. I don't know. I mean, we'd do that, and I'd be making knives for AG for 2 years on that order. Because if AG put it in his catalog, you were going to sell knives.
Yeah.
If they were worth anything. And so we got this relationship going, and so I would go, it turned out that I would go to a show, and AG would want to see me in his room before the show would open. And he would pick out knives that he wanted, which was, sometimes I'd get out there and open up the show and I didn't have a knife for sale. He would let me show them.
Yeah, as a display.
They were sold.
They were his knives to take home and put in the catalog.
And then he introduced me to Columbia River, CRKT. Yeah. And I'm not sure which one we did first. Oh, I'm thinking it may have been the Serengeti.
I think it was.
Remember the Serengeti had the knives
with the
on
parasite blades on for the handle scales.
Yeah, instead of handles, it had a Skinner and a caper one on each side that you could just slip out. They had a stainless thing that locked them in place. So he really had 3 knives: a big folder and then a Skinner and a caper. Well, I was calling it the Remora, and AG said, no. That's not, no, this is not a Remora. He said he saw it about, I don't know, 30 seconds, and he said, it's the Serengeti. And we looked at each other, Marcia and I, and I'm going, yeah, that's 10 times better than Remora. So he entered my knife into the most, whatever that is, innovative knife of the. This was the Blade Show, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I won, which was cooler than heck. And then he introduced me to the CRKT guys, and they said, "Well, we would like to make that knife." And I said, "Okie dokie." So we sat it up and did the deal, and they made it, and it was good.
Yeah, they did
I got
a real
one,
good job.
It's still a good knife. And so one time I went, and we were sitting there in a room and pulling out knives, and he would say, "Oh, he wants that one and this one and that one." And I had one that had a straight piece of micarta or G10. And because one time I wanted to go hunting, and I think I was trying out S9EV, and I didn't have time to make a sheath. So I came up with this idea to put it flat on that piece of G10 and then grind the other side so that you can't cut yourself. And it had that same lock that the Serengeti had to those knives. This kept that blade on that piece of G10. You just push down from on the top and it would slide in. I had a pin in the back.
Yeah, retention pin.
Yeah, and pull it off. And it was little, and it worked. And I didn't have any idea about selling it. And I just had it in there. So we were doing this, and I had already showed AG a bunch of knives. And he said, "What else is in there?" And I said, it's just something that I came up with in the shop, and told him that story. And he said, "Well, I want to see it." And I showed it to him, and he's sitting there working it, and he's quiet. All of a sudden, he looked at me and he said, "Hey, you weren't going to show me this." And I said, AG, I just thought it was just, he said, enough of that. He said, I want this. He took it, CRKT, and we made it. So, and we sold a lot of those.
Well, and now this has transitioned us kind of into the hog era here. So let's back up a little bit. And I would consider this the second stage of your career. So tell us how the hog line got started.
That's an unbelievable, really neat story. I have this buddy, Frank.
Give us a quick time frame of...
Okay, this is around 2000, right in that area. I was thinking Tactical Extreme, but that wasn't the first hogs.
No. Now, I remember.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the hogs were 93, 94 when you actually started using that name.
Marks and I were married in 1990, and I already had Jared and Katie. They were little, like 3 and 2. Also, I had the Widowmaker in there, and that was a big deal in my life. I was lucky I didn't die, but I'm still paying the price. Anyway, so Frank and I were going to go on this hunting trip. We had been on hunting trips since 1970, I think. And I forget now where. Oh, it was in Texas. I was going down there, and I think I was doing it. Oh, I also started writing for 3 and 4 Wheel Action, which was an ATV magazine. I was their hunting editor, and that was cool. But there's more on that if you want it. And but anyway, we started out, and I'm pulling an ATV, of course, and Frank always drove everywhere, and he said, Mike, why you drive? And I knew something was up, and I said, what's up? And he said, well, I got a little pain in my chest. He started eating Advils, and I said, Frank, we can go home right now. This is not costing me any money. The ranch, let me hunt if I put their name in the magazine. He said, no, let's go on down. And I knew he was in bad shape. So we get there. I go out that afternoon and I don't see a hog. The next morning, there were some hogs in this field in the fog, and I waited them out, and I just shot the largest one that was there, and it wasn't very big, but he had teeth, and I had to crawl through the brush, which was rattlesnake country, and I was shooting a 358 JDJ, which is a 444 Marlin neck down to 35. And I creeped up on that gun while I was watching those hogs, and when I touched it off, it hit me in the eye and laid my eye open. And I'm sitting there in the blind with my hand over my eye, getting the blood out and trying to keep an eye on this hog. And anyway, so I had to go after the hog, and I found him dead. Good Lord, I was shooting like a 200 grain brown nose. And so I went back and skinned the hog, quartered it, cut it up, put it in a freezer, and headed back home. And we were down in Texas. It was a 24-hour drive. We were very close to the Mexican border. So I started out, and we got that trailer on there and all that, and we're headed back, and it's nighttime. And we're in, where was it? Oh, shoot. I can't think of the town we were in. Anyway, Frank was terrible. He was just getting really bad. And I said, Frank, I'm going to take you to a hospital. But we didn't know where we were, whether there was a hospital around or whatever. And I pulled into this little bitty station that was just like 2 pumps and a guy in there and a little bitty thing. And I parked the truck in the ATV and opened the door. And when I opened the door, the guy behind the counter went up and put his hands up on the wall. And I said, hey, call 911. And this guy's eyes were this big. And I thought, what is wrong with this dude? I said, call 911, dude. And he's like shaking and going on. And I'm saying, please call 911. Because we didn't have phones. You know,
Yeah.
we didn't have
Cell phones.
our cell phone. So finally, he got a hold that I was not going to rob him. I didn't have a weapon or anything. I guess it was just the way I looked and the way I came in there. Turned out the hospital was right not 2 miles away. That's another story. They arrived, and Frank had a full beard, not quite as long as yours, long hair. And I had a full beard, and they're trying to get him out of the car to look on him. And there was a big old fat boy there who was the boss. And he was making disparaging remarks about Frank being a homeless guy and making all these jokes. Finally, I had it. And I was going to knock him out. So I go up and I put my hand on his shoulder and I was going to turn him around and knock him out. And then I felt this great big hand on my shoulder. And I turned around and there's like a 6'4" highway patrolman standing behind me. And he said, Mike, you need to come with me. And he took me back in the car and he said, you were about to make a big mistake. And I said, but it would have felt really good. He said, yeah, that guy is a bastard. And that's just the way he is. And I said, well, he shouldn't have this job. And so then they came over and said, look, we're taking him to the hospital, which was right up the road. And so I get in there and I said, can I follow the ambulance? They said, no. The cop said, I'll take you. So we went to the hospital. Frank was there for some hours, and then they said, Little Rock, that's where we were. And but this hospital was like on the outskirts. And they said, we don't have the facilities here. We're going to send you into this other hospital that was down in town or somewhere. So I'm talking to him, and I said, well, can I follow the ambulance down there to this hospital? Because I don't know where I am. The cop said, Mike, you don't need to go down there because tomorrow morning you won't have any ATV, no wheels and tires, and probably the vehicle will be gone too. He said it's the worst possible place, for robberies and all that.
Which explains why the attendant was hands in the air.
Yeah. And so I went in, and they wouldn't let me see Frank, and I'm trying to figure out what they're doing to him, but they didn't know. But he was going to stay, and I knew he was in bad shape, and I was afraid he was going to die. So I called Marcia, and I said, Marcia, I'm coming home. Frank is in the hospital. Well, this was in the era where I was in the hospital every other day. And she said, you mean you're in the hospital? I said, no, it's Frank. I said, I'm coming home, but it's going to take a long time. I was probably maybe halfway home. And she called Frank's wife, Linda, and Linda got somebody, and they headed to Little Rock. Well, I started home. This is how this all got started. And I had these buddies down in Ripley because you were there. That's where I met you at Dwight
and Tommy.
Dwight, Tom's hardware store. And I was talking to him one day, and he said, Mike, why don't you make a knife that's cheap enough that we can sell it? Well, coming back, I was thinking about everything in the world, driving by myself with the radio on and windows down, singing, trying to keep myself awake. And I remembered what Dwight said. And I said, well, I could come up with a line using, what was I using? An oil quencher.
Oh, 1095.
1095, that's what it was. Yep. I think that's the only time I ever used 1095. And I said, I can buy that cheap and do a flat grind on it. I could grind a grind on the front of the wheel.
Yeah.
Make it up and down. And
I've got one of those drop points you did with that.
You do?
With that swoopy grind. Yeah.
I want to see it sometime.
Yeah, I've got it. I've got that, and then I've got one of the Razorbacks, which is the double hollow
I didn't
grind.
know that.
Yeah, I got those from Dwight and Tom.
I don't have any of those. Can you believe that? But anyway, so I come up with this idea of this 1095 and cheap handles and Kydex sheaths and selling them at a good price. But I said, I need it to be different than my regular knives because it may not go over.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to ruin my reputation for my good knives. So I said, well, I have to come up with something different that's cool. And what popped into my head, but I was on a hog hunt, and I said, hog knives, that'll do it. And I said, I'll have a picture of a hog with big teeth and all that. But I said, it's got to be different, so I'm going to spell it HAWG. Knives with an attitude.
Spell it how it's pronounced, right?
Knives with an attitude. And with an exclamation mark.
Of course.
And that all came about on that trip. And when I got home, oh Lord, finally, I don't remember how many hours I was driving, and I never stopped. Except in Bowling Green, I stopped and got at a the restaurant on the sides of the freeways everywhere. Anyway, they offer a pancake breakfast with all these.
No, Denny's.
Huh?
Denny's.
What?
Denny's restaurant.
No, bigger than them.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, I knew about that breakfast, and that was keeping me.
Keeping you going.
Keeping me going. If I could make it to that and Cracker Barrel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if I can make it to that Cracker Barrel, it's right over the Tennessee line in there, I'll be okay, because then it's just about 6 hours home. And that was like, I'd already been like 18 hours. And so I made it there and went in and had like 4 cups of coffee and all those pancakes and stuff. And I parked where I could see the truck. But, they're all in good parts of town. And got my breakfast and called Marcia and told her where I was. And when I got home, after I slept a day or two, I told her my idea. And she's like, meh. Yeah. And I said, well, Dwight said that he would like to have some cheap knives. And I said, I'm going to get him some. I'm going to make a couple and get a new stencil and stuff. And so I sat down and drew up some knives. One of them was the Razorback. But the first one was like a drop point, like 5-inch blade, about that wide. it kind of swooped down and then down in the front with a false edge and a micarta handle or black G10, and they were all blasted.
Yeah.
And which was a mistake, but in a Kydex sheet. So it was all sort of coming about. And one of those knobs I came up with was that very first one. I gave it to Jared, and Jared was about 10. And I said, "Here, Jared, take this out and destroy it." She said, "What?" And I said, "Just take it out and destroy it." I said, "Cut anything you want." But I said, "Don't cut rocks and concrete and stuff like that." I said, "Just everything you would use a knife for, you just do it." I said, "If you want to throw it, you can do it." And he's just looking at me like, "Dad, is that you in there?" I said, "Yeah, Jared, just do that." I got a picture of him. He's got paint on his face and camo and stuff, and he's got that knife in his hand. I got that somewhere. That's one of my favorite pictures of Jared, who is my son, by the way. And so, and then I bought some more steel, and I came up with some more knives and put an ad in the blade. Well, boom. Turns out it was a pretty good idea.
Yeah, yeah.
And I started getting inundated with orders again. And it started cutting into the time that I was spending on my regular knives. It's like two personalities,
Yeah.
two businesses going.
Well, now, it was two distinct styles, two very distinct styles.
Yeah, it was. And some people still had a hard time thinking that this was me.
Yeah, consoling one with the other, definitely.
"Is that you, Mike?" And I'm saying, "Yep, that's me." And so then, these knives started to sell. But the dealers and collectors, like in New York and all those places, said, "Mike, you need to make a folder, a hog folder." So I came up with a hog folder.
And now, which was the first hog folder? How radical was it?
It wasn't radical at all.
All right, so
it was just a regular liner lock with a straight blade on the top, about 3.5 inches.
Okay,
and the handle kind of swooped and dropped in the back, and there wasn't really anything radical about it. But those other knives weren't really radical.
No, they were.
That one you
the
had
Razorback. It was
sort of
aggressive.
Yeah, aggressive.
It was a very aggressive piece.
Yeah, it was.
Whereas, like the drop point, and it was a drop point. It was everything you wanted out of a drop point. It was a good utility using
You had
knife.
serrations on the back?
No.
It doesn't have serrations.
No, mine was a smooth spine.
One of them had serrations on the back. That made it a little more radical.
Yeah.
So I made a folder. Okay, this is all the progression that that happens every time. And so I would make the hog folder and have different handles and all this stuff, and then they got full of those, and they said, "We need a different model." So I had this idea about a sub-line, but in very aggressive styles, overbuilt. I don't know exactly where I got this idea for the tactical extremes, but I had some 1/4 inch.
Well, now let's back up just a little bit, because you did the Millennium.
God, I forgot.
And then
it
got into American Handgunner, and that became kind of a thing all in and of its own.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, because that's really where, in my opinion, where the real radical shit comes in, and that is what a lot of people view the hog line as, is specifically the Millennium.
Yeah. So we know when that was.
Yeah.
That was 2000. And I don't remember where I got the idea for the Millennium. I was just sitting there looking at paper and coming up with the design, and I thought, I'm going to do something that nobody is used to seeing, because folders back then, everybody made the same blades. They were all just a variation of a drop point or straight or bowie. And then I came up with that shape where it comes across and then down in the front and then back and back up again and then back to the Picasso, and then that part is serrations. And I didn't want to do serrations with a file.
Yeah.
So I went out there and I started experimenting on doing the serrations on my big grinder, on my baiter. And I came up with that serration, which was dangerous as hell to do. I'm holding that knife like cockeyed, that you have to turn it one side to get that one side grind, and then you got to turn it upside down and do that other side. So each serration had two separate edges that you had to grind on there. And if you moved too far, you were either up into the blade or up into the handle, because you got to know where your big wheel is. But those came about with the Millennium, those serrations. And of course I used carbon fiber and titanium and anodized that titanium. And I'm not sure where that first one went, but it ended up in the hands of that writer. I don't know remember if I put an ad in the Blade. You remember seeing anything like that, John? How that came about?
No, I don't remember. I remember just now it was on cover too with the pistol that month.
One of them was on the
for
cover
American
of
Handgunner. And I mean that one, stellar pictures, and it was a Patrick Covert article, and his articles were always really well written.
Yeah,
and the photography was fantastic. And I mean, who knows how many of those that article alone sold.
I know. It was like, what?
And I mean, it was stunning, and it was different at the time. I mean, it was the beginning of what we now call radical tactical.
Well, yeah, I think so. And you guys think they're doing all this radical stuff and everything. I was doing it 25 years ago. And so, yeah, that thing hit. And so I was making 3 or 4 different kinds of Millenniums. That regular one, 4 inches, and then I did another one that was like 3.5 and scaled down, and and then I made a Whopper that was bigger than that. And then, so the same thing happened with the Millenniums. They said, my customers said, we want more different models. So I had to sit down and start designing again with stuff that was different again. But that Millennium went on for a while. And unfortunately, I sold the rights to that company who did not treat it well.
Yeah, that was a shame.
Yes. And the sad part about that story was those people came and offered me all this stuff, and I said yes, stupidly. And the next day, the guy from Spyderco called me.
Oh man!
Wouldn't that just?
That's a pisser. And Spyderco would have done a fantastic job with it.
Yes, they would have. They'd probably still be making it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, unfortunately, all the decisions we make are not good ones.
Hey, man, hindsight's 20/20, right?
Yeah. And those are still floating around that are like, what, $39 or something.
Yep.
But they're made well, but no, not like Spyderco would have made them.
Yeah, no.
And people are still mixing them up with my regular knives. They're asking, did you make this? And I'm saying, no, it's got your name on it. I said, I know, but this other company made that. It is my design, They did the hog tooth.
Yeah.
Now, they sold a lot of hog teeth because they weren't very much at all. That little folder, and I sold a bunch of them too, and they were hard to make because everything was so small. You didn't have any room, and it had that reverse curve,
Yep.
like a karambit. Well, that was a karambit folder back in 2002 or 3 or something like that. So actually, I think that the first of those knives that I have, 2005 was the first one that I showed you of the Tactical Extreme. So now there was another knife that was similar to the Millennium. It's up there. That was the knife that was on the cover of Handgunner.
Yeah, and the one on Handgunner was kind of a one-off, unique piece, wasn't it?
Well, there's a story there too. I was talking to a guy. I don't know where I met him. It must have been a show. He was a custom pistol maker. And we made a deal that he would get the knife on the cover and I would get a custom pistol. Well, he got his knife that was on the cover, but I never did get a custom pistol. And I never heard from that guy again. I always wanted to meet up with him one more time.
And just tell him what a sack of shit he is?
Yes. That was a bad deal. He just kind of fell off the world. And he was a really good pistol smith, too.
Yeah, he was.
And his pistols were radical, too.
They were artistic. They were very well done.
They were, because they're the same thing. The half of that article was about his pistols.
Mm-hmm.
But my knife made the cover. That's just cooler than heck. I know a lot of makers get stuff on the covers now, but there's a lot of magazines now. Back then, there weren't a lot of magazines. And Handgunner was it for us handguns. And they just didn't do knives and put them on the cover. I don't think I ever saw a knife on the cover of Handgunner.
Well, the thing is, after that issue, you started seeing it more.
Yes.
It set trend with that.
So that is always a progression. I made one, and then bunches of that model, and then they want something different. You go to something different, and then they still want something. It's just a progression on and on and on. Now, some of the guys are still making the same knife. All I got to do is looking at that knife, and I know who made it.
Yeah. Because
they're still making the same knife that they made in 1974. And I don't know if I could do that professionally and keep my sanity making the same knife that I made 50 years ago. But I guess there is stability about that, you know. But I couldn't do it.
No, and it's different strokes for different folks.
It would drive me nuts. I have to be creating. And I don't know. I just have this thing inside of me that says, you have to be different. I don't know where I got that from, but it was from an early age.
It's worked out for you.
It worked out for me.
Ask not why in this instance, right?
But there are highs in your career, and I've had several.
Yeah, definitely.
And that was having that knife on the handgun web was, and that article was, and then having Sid write that book, and that those those are that's stuff you never forget.
Yeah. Well, they're high water marks. They're watershed moments. Which now, with the millennium and all of that, that would progress into the tactical extreme line. So, talk to us about how we got to tactical extreme.
Well, it happened at the end of the millennium era there. And I got this idea of doing a line of overbuilt knives that are radical.
I would go so far as to call them excessive.
They were excessive. Some of them had a thing called the deadbolt, which it had a lock in the front, which was 1/4-inch steel, and then it had a 3/16 pin in the back of the blade, which locked it up on the front and the back of the front of the knife, of the pivot pin. And I think one of those that I have has the deadbolt. So, thinking of guys who make boulders, they would think it was stupid to put a pin in the front and then another pin in the back, when both of them were too big for a boulder anyway, a 1/4-inch piece of steel. And but I had been introduced to S90 and S30, and I liked them both. But S90 was
God.
It was a bitch to make, to grind, and you had to go to 2,000 degrees to heat treat it, and but I loved it. When I got it done, I loved it. But I charged for that.
Well, you had to. God,
yeah.
Dude, it destroys belts. How many belts would you go through on just one blade?
I don't know. I had a stack full of blades, full of belts there, and I was constantly looking for better belts, and that was a problem. But grinding titanium is also a bitch.
Yeah.
So I had a really good relationship with the people at Bader, and where I bought my first big grinder, which was a 132x2, not a 72x2. And there's a story that I missed when I stuck this blade through my knee.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Everybody's got their injury story. Bob Lovelace told you it would happen. So tell us about this.
He didn't know it was going to be a whole page full of injuries. So I had my shop in an old tobacco barn out on 41, and I had my big Bader sitting there, and it's summertime, and I think the door's open, and I'm doing this little knife with bolsters, just really tiny, luckily, sitting there in my jeans on my stool, and I'm grinding away. Well, little did I know, I had put this belt on backwards. So it had
the lap
coming around. And when I went down too far, and that lap grabbed the point, and all of a sudden I felt this whop on my knee. And I looked down, and there's the handle of that knife sticking out of my jeans.
Oh, not something you want to see.
Oh, yeah. And it's like, where's the blade? And the blade was sticking underneath my kneecap.
Oh, God.
And it was just lucky that it didn't hit hardly anything. It just went right in there, right in under my kneecap. So I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, well, I got to pull that out. So I reached down there, and I pulled it out. And it's like, boy, you know what? That hurts. And I rolled my pants leg up, and of course it's bleeding, and then my knee is already starting to swell.
Of course.
But I didn't go. Oh, maybe I did go to ER, and they said, no, you need to go down to the bone guy, and I forget his name, and he took me right in and had me up there on the table, and The nurse comes in with this hypodermic needle, and I swear to God, I could see the hole in the needle from the doorway.
Oh,
It
God.
was like a Frankenstein type thing with the little circle you put your thumb through. And I said, tell me that's not going to go into my leg. And he said, no, I'm not going to tell you that because it is going to your leg. He said, if we don't drain that, your leg is going to get the size of a watermelon because it was bleeding in there and
Just filling up.
yeah, it just filling it all out. So they didn't numb it or anything. They just stuck that thing in there and started pulling out. It was that big because they pulled that, whatever, the blood and all. The bad stuff was the white stuff
Oh,
that came out. And when I pulled it out, the blade didn't have any blood on it. It had these white things on it. And I knew that was not
a good.
Oh,
yeah.
anyway, also, right after I did that, I thought, I got to go to Mom's. She lived right out on Fishing Gut, not very far away. And I had a truck I called the Green Monster that I built up. My dad and I built up from a burned out Blazer. This truck was like a monster truck, but it was on the road, 35-inch tires. So I had to climb in that truck. It had a 4-speed standard shift. I had to use the clutch on my leg.
Oh,
And I go out to Mom's and I get out of the truck and I start walking in. And I get to her and she said, what have you done to yourself now? I said, I've hurt my knee, Ma. And so I rolled it up and she said, you need to go to the doctor now. And so I did. I drove to the doctor. And he said, Mike, we got to put you in the hospital. And I said, man, I can't go to the hospital. I'm working and I don't have insurance. He said, well, you got to go to the hospital. If that gets infected, you're going to lose the mobility of that leg. He said, it may look small, but this is not a small injury. And he put the fear in me. He said, you need to be in the hospital with an IV, with antibiotics and everything in there. So that's what he did. He put me in the hospital. Just over that little bitty. I still have that scar. how teeny it is.
yeah, but it's still there after all these years.
Well,
too.
you see, it went. Oh, wait a minute. There it is, right there. It went in right there, and
I can see the exit wound right there.
Yep. It was. I didn't realize it was sticking out down there. I was just happy it was a small blade.
Yeah, no shit, right?
Yeah. So, but let me read you something here off my phone. This is a list. I don't know. We kind of got off the story here, but this is kind of interesting. Okay. I've had 8 surgeries on my hands, both of them. I've had 1 surgery on both elbows. I had my left thumb removed and a 1/2 inch of arthritis taken off, and it's put back on. So it's different from this thumb. See how wider it is there? That was from holding the lock closed on Tactical Extremes.
And just
that one, yeah, because those 100,000 liners were so strong. And I did that how many times a day, holding that lock closed so you could work on the internal stuff on that bolt. And, okay, what else? I've had I've had a knife under the knee. I had trigger fingers on all of my right hand fingers. They had to come out. That was fun because they were awake for that. And knife under the knee. Oh, when they did my thumb, they also had 4 places they went into my arm to get tendons. so that this thumb would work, because the tendons that were in there,
Just shot.
they were shot. Yeah, but they didn't tell me this before I went in, and I thought I was going. It was in a hospital in Louisville, and I wake up. I mean, I've had all these before, and that I just ended up with a big bandage on my wrist or something, you know. I wake up and I have a cast all the way up to my shoulder. And it's like, dude, I didn't sign up for this.
What the fuck happened?
Yeah. But he was gone already. It was like Friday, and he was gone. It's like, God, Marcia, what's going on here? And, you know, I got this thing, you know, you see it in the movies and stuff. And it's like, dude, what happened to my hand and arm and all that stuff? That's another story. We go in. I hadn't had anything to eat. You know how it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to fast before anesthesia.
Yeah, because they had to put me under to do that, thankfully. So I said, she said, where do you want to stop? We're coming back from Louisville. And I said, the very first restaurant we get to, let's stop. Because I hadn't had anything to eat for 24 hours. It's a fish place. We go in, they have like picnic tables. And we sat down there, and I put my arm up on one right there on the edge. So literally, I did not know until this waitress came out of the kitchen, and we were right there by the door. And all of a sudden, she stopped, and her face turned white, and she fell back, fainted, dead away. And the manager was coming out. He caught her, and he said, dude, he said, look at the floor. And I'm looking at the floor, and there was a puddle of blood underneath that table that was coming from my cast.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, shit, what? You know, I said, we got to go, Marcia said, we got to go back down there and get this fixed, or you're going to bleed out. So we go back down there, and it's, like I said, it's Friday, but he was still there helping people on Friday that didn't have insurance. And I came in, and he did not speak English very well. His name was Tsai, Tsai. But he was the best hand surgeon in the country. And so they had to take me back in there, put me out again, and they sawed that thing off and fixed whatever it was that was bleeding. I never did find out what was doing that. And so then I come out, and I just got these bandages all the way to my shoulder instead of that big cast. He said I was going to be out for 3 months. And it turned out I was out for 5 months. And I had, rehabilitation for 5 solid months, getting my left hand again until I could make knives. And that was a skinny part.
Yeah, lean times.
Yeah. So, and then I've had myriad objects removed from my eyes. I don't know how many you've ever had, but even though I wore goggles and a big pair of stuff still got in my eye, and it seemed like it was always titanium.
So you can't magnet it out.
Yeah, you cannot magnet out. Those little pieces of steel, you just stick that magnet in there, and it pulls it right out. Boom. Titanium, they got to reach in there with those tweezers and get it out. Yeah. So that was not fun.
No, tweezers on your eyeball is never fun.
But my eye doctor and I got to have a good relationship. Because I would go in there and there'd be like 10 people waiting, and he would come out and he'd say, send Mike in. Because I'd be sitting there with my hand over, with my handkerchief on my eye, with, crying like a baby. And he would take me in, and he said, what's in there now, Mike? And I'd say, I don't know, but
Stuff.
It's probably titanium. And he said, you're the only person I've ever had that came in here with titanium in their eyes.
Lucky you.
Yeah, lucky me. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all the
Majors.
the
None of the minors.
the major ones, not counting. I don't know what you do. You can see that finger. See how crooked it is?
And it's my thumbs. I've got one thumb bigger than the other, and
Oh well, yeah. Well, you're due. You'll be due one of those surgeries to take all that arthritis out of there.
dude,
As
sometimes it just seizes up so tight. And,
well, you're on the way. You're on the way. But when I do see all those bumps there.
Oh, well, man, I mean, your fingertips at a 30-degree angle to the knuckle. I mean,
But you know what did that? Well, I mean, I'd cut it or smash it or whatever, and to stop the bleeding, I would put super glue on it
of course.
and hold it until it quit bleeding. Then I put a Band-Aid on it, and I'd go on working. I'd come up and I got my hand bandaged up, and Marsh is saying, "What did you do to your hand now?" And I say, "That's all nothing." And but that one there, I cut it down to the bone, all the way across there. You can see how much smaller than
Oh, yeah,
that,
noticeably.
Yeah, because it's not getting any blood. I was going on a gator hunt in Florida. Well, this is getting way into 2014, but you want to keep that one later?
I'll tell you what, we've covered the tactical extremes, everything overbuilt, everything to excess. We can go ahead and start transitioning forward from that. No problem.
Okay. So I had like semi-retired in 2014. I was still making tactical extremes and little folders and just about everything. And I was still working, 8-10 hours a day. And Marcia retired the second time for good. And she's retired. And she's there at home when I came in from the shop one day, and I go in and get cleaned up and come in for supper. And she said, I said, "How do you like being retired?" And she said, "I like it." And I said, well, I told her what I had to do the next day. And she said, "Why do you need to go do that the next day?" And I said, because I have a business here. And she said, "You need to retire." So I retired. I gave my equipment to my son, and we moved to Florida. And for 18 months, I never did anything in knives. And all I did was fish and eat. Marcia's brother is a millionaire, and we would go out to eat like 3 or 4 times a week. And that's all I did. I had a boat and a lake. It was sort of a good time, although it was boring. And but I got the idea for a gator hunt. And but anyway, one day Marcia put us on Facebook. And so I came up on Facebook, and that was the end of my retirement. As soon as my name and picture got out there again, the phone started to ring, and all of a sudden, I had orders again. People
who can say no, right?
wanting knives. And I was like, she was like, "No, you're not doing this." And I said, Yes, I am, Marsha. I'm going to do this. So I went and I bought a $35 grinder from Harbor Freight and a welder, and went to work in the garage. I made a 2x72 grinder of my own design, which Jared still uses, and bought a little, $69 drill press, which I still have, and 6x48, and started making knives again in my garage down there. But the things, this was different. I don't know if you want to get into this now, but all the time that I was making full time, I had to make what was selling.
Yeah.
I couldn't make really the knives that I wanted to make. So when I started back up again, I just started doing the stuff that I wanted to do. And if it sold, it sold. And if it didn't, it didn't. Well, I don't have any of those knives. So sometimes I see them and it's like, oh, dude, did I make that? Yeah, you did. I made that. But I went on a couple of gator hunts and I didn't get one. But I went a couple of fishing trips with the same guy, and we sort of got a relationship going. So this one time I'm getting ready to go gator hunting again, and I just thought, I'm going to get one this time. I'm going to take him a knife that we can use when we skin the gator. So I made a knife, but it came time to leave and for the gator hunt. And I had just made a Kydex sheath, and I had it formed and everything, but it was a little bit tight. And I heated it up with a heat gun, and it was already finished and sharp as a razor. And when I pulled it out, it cut through that finger. And I could see the bone in there.
Yeah, down to the white
so
part.
So what did I do? I
super glued it. Hell yeah.
But I went into the house and I'm like a blood trail. And I told Marcia, I said, you got to fix my finger. And she said, you got to go to the ER. And I said, no, I'm going on a gator hunt. So she wrapped my finger up to about 2 inches of stuff on it. And I went and got in the boat and everything. And we're hunting, and I'm holding my hand out of the boat, dripping blood in the water.
Oh, man. You're chumming the water.
Yeah, and that's what the guy said. He said, well, this can't hurt our chances, And I think that was the night that I got that 8'3" gator. And turns out you don't skin your gators. You have to take it to a state-owned gator person, and they do your gator, and you pay them because they want to know everything there is to know about that gator.
Yeah.
So I just gave him the knife, and we didn't get to use it. So I suppose he still got that knife. His name was Bobby, and I kind of miss going on gator hunts because that was exciting.
Yeah.
Trying to get an 8'3" gator in your boat, hooked on an arrow from a crossbow, is an experience that everybody ought to go through. And then we got it in the boat, and we thought it was dead. We finally got it in the boat, and when it hit the boat, it came alive, dude. And luckily we had 2 people there, and I'm standing up in the gunwale in the front. I'm trying to stay out of the way, and this thing is whipping the crap out of my outfitter and his helper. And they're shooting it in the head with a 12 gauge gun.
Bang stick.
Bang stick. Well, they did. Hey, the bang stick that thing 3 times before it would settled down, and finally there was a big old boy. He got up on top of it with a knife and was pushing it down in his brain and standing on it to kill that gator. It was like, and that gator hit him, his tail on his leg, and he had a great big welt on the side of his leg that looked just like the gator tail. He said, I think my leg is broke. I said, well, it ain't broke, but it's going to hurt like it's broke. So it's on the wall up there. Yeah, I'm not counting the 17 deer and the eland and scimitar orcs and myriad other animals. I hold 2 world records. A world record boar, 475 pounds with 12 and a half and 13-inch teeth. Think of that.
Yeah, no, I've seen pictures of that pig, and that is a massive piece of swine.
And the mount does not do it justice.
No.
When he's looking at you at 10 yards like you owe him money, and his hair standing up on his back, and his shoulder is like even with your shoulder, and he's got teeth, and he's pissed because I just shot him in the back with an arrow that went all the way through that didn't quite hit enough vitals. And that was exciting. That was in the magazine too. Almost all these things that I wrote up were, man, we haven't mentioned the ATV magazines and all the hunts I went on that deal. And but I had one experience when we were going on a hunt. We were going to Wyoming, Frank and I, with an ATV on the back, and I was hunting antelope. And I had made a deal with a game warden out there, and he would let me get me a place to hunt, and I would give him a night. Well, that was a good deal. So I did that. So we're on the way out there, and we had trouble with my truck. It was having a trouble pulling that trailer with a bike on it up and down the mountain. And I had a little 6-cylinder motor in there, and I had a great big set of tires on it. I didn't realize that was the problem. It wasn't the motor. It was the tires. They were too big. So we couldn't do anything about that. But we had to stop in Iowa, I think it was Iowa, for gas and a snack or whatever. And we stopped at this place along the freeway, and just a little station off the freeway in someplace in a little town in Iowa. And we stop, and I go in, Frank's in the restroom, and inside this station, there were like 20 or 30 people, just redneck people, just standing there talking and drinking coffee. And I think this was the one public place in that town that people would meet and socialize with each other. Well, there was this little boy in his cowboy hat and boots and all that. And when I walk in, I notice he's punching his dad with his elbow and looking at me and holding a magazine. And I'm going, what's the deal? So this little boy comes over to me and he said, "Are you Mike Franklin?" And I was just absolutely blown away. I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Would you sign my magazine?" And his dad was there just smiling. And I said, "Son, yes, I would sign your magazine." Now, what are the odds that could happen?
Yeah, who knows? Small world, though, right?
Yeah, and it's like, but that didn't have anything to do with knives or anything. It was that magazine.
Yeah, the ATV and 4-wheel.
Yeah, ATV. That was. Think I was writing for 3 and 4-wheel action then, but it became 4-wheel action after they
pretty much
outlawed
discontinued
3-wheelers.
three-wheelers.
Yeah. And then ATV magazine came to me and offered me a deal if I would sign with them. and I signed with them and wrote for them for 6 years. And that was a fun time to be alive. That deal I had with ATV magazine, and having 2 kids on a farm. We had 35 acres. And then at one time we had 65 acres, all up and down hills and places to ride and hunt and shoot. And actually my kids got me that job on that magazine. And but I don't know if you want to get into that or not. But
Yeah, go ahead and cover it.
well, Katie was like 5. Jared was like 7. And so we're on the farm, and I told Marcia, I said, we need to get the kids some ATVs. No, we're not doing that. I said, yeah, we're doing that. So back then, they were not very available. ATVs just for kids.
Yeah, the smaller ones.
Yeah. So I looked around and looked at magazines and places for sale and all that, and I finally found Jared a little one. But he was riding a custom 3-wheeler that my buddy had redone for a knife. It was a little 70 Honda, sharp it was a junker, and he turned it into a custom red, loud. It was cooler than heck. And we never allowed those kids on those ATVs without they had a helmet and armor on, or they didn't get on it, and goggles and gloves, the whole deal. And he would ride that out to my mom's place, and Mom hated it. And then Katie was saying, well, like, I want to ride too. So I got her a little, I think it was a 50 2-stroke Suzuki, and he had a 90, and that 90 would take me around. So we would go on at Mrs. Cooper's, who was right down the road from my mom's house, and we would ride, and they would ride down, and where we lived in Huntington Park there in the subdivision, and come in absolutely covered in mud. And they would come to the back door, and they would knock, and you'd open the door, and there'd be this mud thing standing there, dripping on the floor. And Marcia would say, all right, take your clothes off. So they would undress, and we would sweep them and go hose them down and hose them down. And but they would. I had this relationship with Yamaha and Polaris, 2 of the biggest manufacturers. And Yamaha would send me a brand new bike, a prototype sometimes, and I would write up an initial review of that bike. And then after that was published, all of the aftermarket people would start sending me parts for that bike to dress it up, and winches and racks and all that stuff. And this was before there's ATVs are such a part of our lives anymore. And this was kind of a big deal. And so I would write articles on all the stuff that I was putting on this bike. And then, like a year later, I would do another big article on what I feel about this bike after a year. And then I would take it back to Yamaha. They would put it up in their showroom with all the articles and stuff in the magazines and sell it for 2 or 3 times what it was when it was brand new, which was a neat relationship.
Yeah, heck yeah.
I got 3 bikes. I did the same thing with Polaris. I got prototype bikes that I wanted to keep, a 6-wheeler. You remember that bike?
Yep.
And they wouldn't let me do it.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let me have that bike. That was the one bike I wanted to keep. And they said, no, it's a prototype, and we got to, send it back to the factory and see what you've done to it while you had it, and see what holds up and what doesn't. And I told him, I said, we did not baby this bike. He said, yeah, well, I saw the articles. There was a little spot up there that was muddy after a big rain, and I pulled up, and Jared said, I don't know if I can make it through that. And Jared said, oh, Dad, you can make it. And I went back and revved it up and hit that hole in the little pond and the splash. And he took a picture just when I hit the water, and the bike is just covered in spray and up in the air. It's a really nice photograph. And that made the magazine. And I made it through, but it wasn't, I was floating. We were actually I was on a boat there for a while because of the 6-wheeler.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing actually floated. And other ATVs sink like a rock.
Yeah.
And that thing would go up a 90-degree wall. I mean, I hate to, be a spokesperson for Polaris, but that, I don't know what they're doing now, but that bike was ahead of its time. And that was a good time for me and a good time for my kids. They got to ride and enjoy the farm, and they got to do things that other kids never got to do, like shoot guns, ride ATVs, and shoot bows and arrows. We'd go up in the woods. I would make them bows out of plastic PVC pipe and give them some cheap arrows, and we'd go up and walk through the woods and kill dinosaurs and elephants and all those monsters and everything. And those are times that I'll cherish. I do cherish still. Jared's 40, and they're both. Jared's a knife maker now, and but there's got to be things that you remember that I don't remember. All those hours you spent in the shop, and we'd talk, and
dinner every Friday for years.
Yeah,
and a dinner and a movie.
Yeah, and I know I don't remember all that stuff because I was working at the time.
Yeah, dude, who can? It's life, and it goes by, and I mean,
so how old
you're
were
just
you
living.
When you started coming to the shop?
I was 22 years old, and let's see, I'll be 50 here in 2 months.
Boy, it flies, doesn't it?
Man, I'm telling you.
I'm 78, Sean. 78. And
a well-lived 78.
Well, I had what do you call it? It wasn't an operation. It was
procedure.
Procedure, yeah. And this guy was there, and he was, you have to get undressed to put the gown on and all that stuff. And this guy said, well, I'm here to help you get your gown on and all that. And so I'm taking my clothes off, and he's standing there looking at me. He said, Mr. Franklin, can I tell you something? And I said, sure. He said, you are the most scarred up person I have ever seen. And I said, well, I've had an eventful life. And that stuck with me, that eventful life, like this.
Man, an eventful life is to be strived for. And that's a hell of a scar. What I'm looking at here, folks, is a scar that runs the length of his right arm pretty much. From about
all the way up here to my ear.
From about an inch from his wrist all the way up to almost touching his earlobe on the right side.
So I had a doctor. He said, Mr. Franklin, what the hell kind of operation did you have on your arm? And I said, it wasn't an operation. I said, I got into a knife fight in Walmart's parking lot. And he was like, really? I said, no. I fell into a barbed wire fence. And kind of got hung there until Jared could find me. I had a $1,500 camera in my arms, which I should have dropped, but I didn't. And I fell into that fence, and it did not want to let me go. I'm hanging there like this. It was like, it had like 3 strands of barbed wire like that. And I'm hollering, Jared. He's going, Dad, where are you? Because the weeds were like chest high. And he came, took the camera, and they got me out of that fence. And then I had to go home and face Marcia.
Oh.
But you name it, and I pretty much done it.
Yeah.
I haven't told you all of the jobs that I was
Oh
offered.
yeah. I mean, we've got a skim and cliff notes kind of just.
Okay. And some of these people will not believe, and that's okay. Because I'm not making this shit up. This stuff happened to me.
I can vouch a lot of it because I was fucking
you
there.
were there.
You know?
Yeah. Well, like in high school, I was offered that doctor's scholarship, which people would kill for. But I did not want to spend my life in a hospital or a doctor's office. And I said no. Well, when I was teaching, the guy that I taught with was the band director, and he was a jazz person. And we set it up that we would bring all these entertainers into the school and entertain the kids and like give seminars and stuff. And we had big names come into the school, and one of them was Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders. They had a couple of monstrous hits back in the late 50s and 60s. And they came in, and they did that day, Jerry's group performed and my group performed, and I sang one of his songs, a slow one that I loved. And so that next day, after he performed, they were still there, and we were cleaning up, and I was sweeping the floor in the gym with a big old push broom. And Wayne Cochran came in, and he said, well, Mike, he said, what are you doing for lunch? And I said, I don't know. He said, is your house close? And I said, yeah. He said, is there a burger place? Yeah. So he said, let's go there to your place. And I said, okay. This is Wayne Cochran. And so we picked up some burgers at the place and went to my house, and we're sitting there, and I'm wondering what's going on. And he said, I'd like to offer you a job. And I said, doing what? He said, everything that you do now, except it would be for me, and you'd make umpteen times more money than you're making now. And I'm going, is this really happening? You know? He said, he knew me pretty well. I know he'd done his homework. He said, you're not married? No. And he said, you're not tied down except for this job? And I said, well, yeah, but I signed a contract with this job. But you know how strict they are. And I said, I should just give up, just walk with, just get on the bus and go with you. And he said, yeah. Play piano and do some arranging, because I wrote all the music for my rock ensemble. And I said, Wayne, I don't think I can do that. So when he left, he gave me a big picture of himself, and he wrote on there, keep pushing that broom, Mike. I got a picture up there of Jerry and me and Wayne after that concert that night, and that made me feel pretty good.
Yeah, don't hurt a feller's feelings at all.
And then I was at a show in Las Vegas at the old, what was that hotel? It's gone now. Oh shoot, Marcia will know that, but I can't remember. And I was by myself, and the way the airlines scheduled stuff, I couldn't get a flight back to Cincinnati until in the morning. So I went to the bar after the show was closed, and so I had some money, and I'm sitting there, but I love watching people. In Las Vegas, you can see any kind of person that there is on earth is going to be in Las Vegas. And of course, to me, it's like another planet. And I'm sitting there in my jeans and Western shirt and cowboy boots, and at a little table about 2 feet round. And it's getting late. It's like, I don't know, 12 or something. And I was getting ready to go to the room. And this guy walks up and says, "May we sit at your table with you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but I'm getting ready to leave. You can just have it." He said, "No, no, 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 no. You stay." Well, it was an older guy, probably 60. And he had 2 women with him who, let's say, were way younger. And I would say they were women of the night.
Professional company.
Yes. And so they sat down and we started talking, and he started asking questions, and I soon found out that yes, they were ladies of the night. This guy was a millionaire. He had a suite at the hotel reserved. It was just him. He had travel agencies all around the world, all in the big capitals like Rome and Paris and all that. And he was in Las Vegas. He didn't have a family. And he traveled from one of these travel agencies to the next. That's all he did. And he had gotten robbed. He got rolled, they called it, as he was getting in his room the night before. And the guy from security came and said, "Can you come up here, and I want you to look at some pictures?" And he left for a few minutes. And I said, "Well, I'll go back to the room." He said, "No, you just stay there and stay with us." So he left, and I'm talking to those 2 girls. One of them's a blonde. She's sweet as she can be, and one of them's a brunette, and she's a bitch. Well, I could tell right away that he liked the blonde a lot better than the bitch, and that was noticeable and understandable. But they were both beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. And the brown bitcher said to me, she said, "Look, Jack, I'm going to Rome in the morning with him, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get there. Do you understand?" And I said, "Probably not." But the other one had already been told, the blonde, that she was going to Rome the next day. So she wasn't talking to me that much. We knew what she was going to do. But I still didn't know what this girl was going to do to go to Rome. I didn't have anything to do with me. I told her, I said, "Well, I'm out of this. I don't have anything to say about this." Well, he came back. So in that time we were there, we talked about everything, and he heard my stories about my gun stuff and writing for Gun World and winning those trophies and the silhouette and all that. And then he wants to go. He said, I'm going to go to the tables. He said, come on, Mike. So we went to the tables. He went to blackjack and dice. And then the one with the wheel.
Roulette.
Yeah. And in about, less than an hour, he lost $2,500, which was a decent amount of money back then. And then a guy came up to him and said, Mr. whatever his name was, it's time to go. And I said, okay, now I can go to my room. And he said, no. We're going to see Charo. Remember Charo?
Yeah. Coochie coochie.
Yeah, big, yeah. Hoochie coochie. So I said, oh my God, it's like 12 o'clock or 1. And she had a show. And so we go to the theater, which was packed. And it was huge. And we go right to the front row table in the center. And a guy comes with, he said, what are y'all drinking? Well, he came down with a tray about 3 feet big around, and it had drinks on it, and he sat it down on the table. He said, there's your drinks. That's so you won't get up and disturb the people in the other tables to go get drinks or have them come and give you drinks. So everybody had like 5 drinks. And Charles came and did her show, and I'm right there on the front row. And it's like, yeah, this is kind of cool. I could probably get used to this. And so Charles over. We go back, and guess what? Our table is still there, empty. So we sit down at the table, and I thought, when am I ever going to get to go to my room? And then he turns and he tells the girls, you all need to go powder your nose. So they both don't say anything. They get up and they leave. And he said, Mike, I want to talk to you. And I said, okay, talk to me. He said, I would like for you to be my personal bodyguard. And I said, what?
Do what?
You want what? And he said, I want you to be my personal bodyguard. I said, well, you don't know anything about me. I said, how can you do that? He said, look at me. He said, I'm old and I am rich. And he said, I've been with you all night long and you have never mentioned money. And I told him, I said, why would I mention money? He said, because when people find out you're a millionaire or you're rich, that's all they want to talk about is money. He said, I don't have anybody. I don't have a family. I don't have anybody. When he got rolled that night before, he realized he needed a bodyguard. And so he picked me, and I kept coming up with all these reasons. I said, I don't have any clothes. He said, we're leaving for Rome at 7 a.m. tomorrow. I said, tomorrow morning? Yep. I said, I don't have any clothes for Rome. And he said, well, be at the men's shop. They had a men's shop in the hotel. He said, be there at like 6 and we'll fit you with suits and clothes and whatever you need. And they'll be on the plane waiting. And I said, man, at this time I was just a knife maker. I wasn't anything else except a writer. And he said, you're not married? I said, no, I'm not. And he told me, I said, you got a house? I said, yeah, but it's not worth a whole lot. He said, really, there's no reason for you not to take this job. I didn't ask him how much money it was going to pay or whatever. And, of course, I said no. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I can because it's crazy. I mean,
Okay, I talked about Roger Combs, didn't I? Roger he was a good friend, and he just died a couple of years ago.
well, he was good for the knife community in
Yes,
general.
he
You in
loved-
particular, but the community in
He
general.
loved knives. And Roger was, what's the word? He was what he was.
Genuine.
When you were talking, it was just like talking to Roger. It's like sitting here talking with you. And because of him, I've had all this stuff with my career because of Roger.
Yeah, that initial impetus.
You think people talk about fate and all that stuff, but all those things came together on that trip to Kansas City and the Guild Show, and all those things fell in line and basically are why I'm what I am now and what I've had in my life. Most of that I owe to Roger and Jimmy Lyle and John Owens at that very first show at the Guild Show. I mean, what are the odds that that's going to happen?
Yeah, astronomical.
Yeah, and that just seems the way it's been. Oh, we didn't do the Harley accidents and
That major heart attack. Yeah.
I did an Evel Knievel off a 20-foot bank on a Harley and went through a barbed wire fence and broke my leg and drove it home. That's a story. Okay. Where do you want to go?
Man, I think we can go ahead and let's bring her home. During quasi-retirement, you've got your freedom. You do what you want to do. You're, a life well lived. So let's finish out on the show. We generally finish out with what we call the fun questions. So, what is your favorite tool and least favorite tool to use in the shop?
Boy, I just love them all. Which ones have I not been hurt on the least? I guess I would have to say my favorite tool was my baiter.
The big baiter?
I've been a baiter fan from the beginning. I have another grinder, but it was given to me by a friend. I didn't mention him. And Gary Geisler. He was at the very first Cincinnati show that I was at.
Is that when they had Blade Show in Cincinnati that time?
But this was an NKC DNA show.
Oh, okay.
When I met him. And he was a knife maker and a good one. And but he was a machinist, and that's what he did. And I drove him crazy because I didn't measure stuff, and I did it by eye. And he would have to make a fixture, and but he lived up around Blanchester, and we'd go up, and he would give me boxes of end mills and drills and stuff that somehow got into his lunchbox at work. I still have them, and we still talk and everything. I got one of his knives is on the wall. Okay, so my favorite one. Oh, he gave me that green one. What's in the green one in there? It's not as flexible as the baiter. You can get so many wheels and stuff. I could make an entire knife and grind it and do the whole thing except drill the holes and all that on that baiter.
Yeah, because of the versatility of how the
wheels
set
from
up.
a half-inch up to I got a 14-inch wheel.
Was it a square wheel grinder?
No, I've never had a
Square
square wheel.
Okay.
I tried. I looked at one, and it was too damn noisy and vibrated too much. Now they may not be that way now.
I don't know if they're still around even.
Oh, I haven't heard that name for a long time. But back then they were pretty big.
Well, yeah. Well, there were only so many games in town.
Yeah,
You know?
the Bader, those people were Johnson was his first name. I can't think of his first name, but wherever there was a knife show, he was there representing Bader. And the first machine I got from him was that 132x2. He said, Mike, I got a machine that I have rebuilt, and he said, I'll sell it to you for $700. And that was like a $2,000 machine back then.
Mm-hmm.
And all you had to do to change the wheels on it were it had a yoke thing, and the bearings came out on both sides. It had little fingers like that, and they just fit down in there. They were tapered. So all you had to do was take your hand and kind of bonk it, pull that wheel back off, and put whatever size wheel
Seat
you
the
wanted.
next one in.
It was fast. The only thing was those 132-inch belts were expensive.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a lot of belt.
Yeah, but I loved that machine. I ground thousands of wheels or blades on that initial Bader 132. Dan Johnson. He's gone now too. His daughter is, I think, at the helm at Bader now. And I don't go to shows anymore, but that's part of it that I miss.
Yeah. Seeing tools and materials.
Yeah, and seeing all those friends and exchanging ideas. And my least favorite one would have to be the drill press. I think I've had more little accidents and cuts and bruises and sores with the drill press because I'm stupid and I don't clamp things down.
The helicopter of doom.
Yeah, the helicopter of death, and it comes around, and if he doesn't cut you, it bruises the crap out of you. It
smacks the shit out of you.
Yeah, and then you're thinking, this is the stupidest thing one of the stupidest things I've ever done.
But it's so quick to not clamp it and just hold it.
I know it. I can hold it. That's the one thing your brain says. Over here on this side, it says, yeah, you can hold it. And this guy over here, he's getting strangled by the guy over here that says, you can do it.
And he's like, I don't think this is such a great idea.
Yeah, after it happens, it's like, this guy says, I told you need to clamp that thing down. So I think that's my favorite and least favorite.
All right. Well, materials. What's your favorite material to work with? What's your least favorite to work with?
Like hand material or?
Any material. What's your favorite material to mess around with? What's your least? If you see it coming, you're like, oh, God, I wish I hadn't agreed to work with that.
Well, I had some... Jared gave me some really, really coarse micarta, or with the weave in it, the real thick weave, and I thought, I saw some Lovelesses with that were pretty. So I said, I'll take it. Then I put it on the handle, and it was the worst stuff I have ever cut through with on a belt. And there was big filaments or whatever that were in there, burlap.
Yeah.
Just never went away. And it's like, dude, I knocked it off that knife and threw it in the trash can. I said, that's it for that.
No more burlap.
Not doing that anymore. My favorite stuff. Let's see. Well, I'm making a knife. I have to say it's the steel, because I never thought about it like this, but seems like I love to grind. Even though it's hard on me now, it hurts my back and my neck. And Marcia and I had a wreck 3 years ago, and I still have problems with my left side, and the way I sit at the grinder, I can hardly ever get really, really comfortable. I used to sit at the grinder and be able to grind 4, 5, 6 hours in a row. I can't do that anymore. I can do like an hour maybe, and then I got to stop. But I would say the steel, I've always liked experimenting with different steels, and still coming back to A2. It's cheap and
it works
good. And making those, you've seen those big knives I make for my doctor, my cardiologist. I go to his office and he writes me a check instead of me writing him a check. And so he's come up with a new knife now he wants me to do. I've done like 50 of those other ones. And one of my best customers, and I don't really need another one. My life is pretty damn good the way it is right now.
Well, man, you know what? I can't think of a better way to wrap up the episode than on that. No, that kind of sums it up, Like I said, a life well lived, and we've got not all of it, but a decent bit of it committed to recording. That makes me happy.
Well, if you're happy with it, John, then I'm happy with it.
Hey, man, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to thank you for taking the time out of your day and sharing with me and sharing with everybody else. And I'm sure that our listeners are really going to enjoy this eclectic talk we had.
Well, I hope so.
I know so. I know how much I've enjoyed it. I know our listenership, and you don't got any worries.
Well, if you're happy with it, then I'm happy with it.
I am tickled.
It's been my life, and everybody says, you should write a book. I said, nobody would believe it.
All right, so that wraps up our Mike Franklin episodes. And I hope you guys enjoyed it half as much as I did recording it, because I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a heck of a story. I mean, almost to the point of being mythical in proportion in places. So if you guys enjoyed it, give me a holler, and, maybe we can do something like this again. To be honest with you, we could interview Mike again. We really just scratched the surface in this 3 hours. We could go in depth in so many other areas. So if you guys enjoyed it, let me know, and we'll see what shakes out. Thanks for listening. And I'm going to thank all of the folks who sponsor us. We've got to thank our Patreon. We'll thank Arizona Custom Knives. Thank Josh and the crew at Paladin 33, the team at Giant Mouse, and Billy and Nick at the P&W CI. Thank you, guys. We really appreciate you. And thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, everyone. To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine in his Facebook group Crine Knives, or on Instagram at Crine Knives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram at birchtreeblades. For my own projects, I'm on the web at raygundivision.com, or check my personal Instagram at msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or discussion about the show itself, you can always find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram at Mark of the Maker. Last but not least, credit for the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show. This is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. And as always, thanks for listening.